First of all, Wilfred, let me make it clear that the decisions are being made by Governor Newsom and that we're an advisory task force to bring to bear information from the ground up in terms of people who run businesses, labor leaders, and community activists. So his goal from the very beginning is to put health first and to have us open up as fast as is safely possible. So from the very beginning, and I think Governor Newsom has done a truly spectacular job of this, he has been putting the health and safety of Californians first. And he's continuing to do so as we move into this phased reopening of the California economy.
But specifically, what's your advice, Tom? Because when this appointment was announced, there was some concern that it wouldn't be bipartisan. You ran for president as a Democrat, that you might push your agenda of clean energy and climate focus, more than just focusing on the reopening in a healthy and safe way.
Well, let me say this. We are in a true health crisis, and we are in a huge economic crisis. And my job here, but also my inclination and my values, are to stand up for every single California worker and every single California business. I mean, as we make decisions going forward, we're talking about trying to have a just, green, and prosperous recovery. But let me be clear, this is no time for partisanship, Sarah. I believe to the core of my being that this is a time when Democrats and Republicans have to pull together on behalf of the safety of Californians and Americans and on behalf of the livelihoods of Californians and Americans. So there should be no question that I am going to be collecting information dispassionately and considering every life and every job as equal and fighting for everybody. I'm absolutely committed to the mission, but in addition, I'm committed to working across the aisle with everybody. And I think our task force reflects that with who's on it. If you look, you will see Republicans and Democrats. You will see the head of the Chamber of Commerce and labor leaders. This is truly a representative task force to give Governor Newsom the best possible information and advice real time, which is what we're doing from the ground up, so he has the best possibility of making the kind of decisions that we all want him to make.
Tom, you're right. I mean, it's certainly an impressive task force, and it's great to hear you say that politics goes out of the window at this stage. One criticism that there has been, or certainly question raised that there has been, is that there was never a federal-wide, nationwide lockdown, and states were left to their own devices as to exactly how they implemented lockdowns and when to reopen. Do you think that was the right call or the wrong call? Do you support the local power and authority as states come to make those decisions to reopen or not?
Well, let me say a couple of things. One is it's already happened, so there's no point in, what's happened is happening. Let me say this. Governor Newsom did a fantastic job very early of recognizing the threat and responding to it. And as we move forward, there is a balance that has been struck between the federal government and the state governments. That's where we are. And I think the state governments do have incredibly important leadership roles in this crisis. I think that a crisis really calls for, leadership across the country. And again, let me say, Governor Newsom has done a fantastic job of preserving lives in California. And I know that as we go forward, he's going to want to reopen as fast as safely possible. And those words in the mission statement about just, green, and forward thinking, where we're putting the most exposed communities at the forefront of our thinking, are not just words. That's something that's deep in his thinking, and it's deep in the thinking of everybody on our task force.
Where's California, Tom, on testing? And is it where it needs to be? And how critical of an issue is that for you?
Well, let me say this. The task force is really a jobs and business recovery group. And so testing is something that really falls in the purview of the governor and the health officials around the state. And I know that that is something that is still ramping up. But if you want to talk about where they feel they are, I think that's something that they should be addressing directly. I know it's a big part of what they want to do, but our job really is to make sure that we come out as fast as safely possible and in a way that works for the people of California and the business of California with particular emphasis on justice and the most exposed communities who are bearing the brunt of this in every way.
Tom, we're going to get the unemployment rate this Friday. All estimates range from 15 to 20%. It's going to be worryingly high. Meantime, with the market closed today, the NASDAQ is only down a couple of percent year to date. How fearful are you that the responses from governments and central banks to this crisis will repeat a theme of 2008-9, which it really helps the wealthy and not those that need it most?
Well, Wilfred, I mean, as you've heard me say over the last few minutes, I think Governor Newsom and everybody on this task force is absolutely committed to not repeating that mistake, of making sure that we rebuild a California that is more just than the California that we brought into this crisis, that we absolutely make sure that the money doesn't go to the richest people in our society, but that in fact it's used, that as we rebuild.
How do you do that?
Well, I think there's a lot of ways to do it, Sarah. I mean, as we're going to have a huge opportunity. First of all, there's supporting people in the short run. I mean, we've broken this down into short, medium, and long term. In the short run, it's getting money directly to people who need it the most. In the long run, as we make investments to rebuild the state, we have to do it with an eye to inclusion and justice and fairness. And that's not just in terms of who gets the jobs and what the jobs pay and where they're located. There's a whole raft of things as we think about rebuilding the state that involves bringing people into a more equitable relationship. I mean, one of the very obvious ones, just to give you an example, is the idea, which has been in California for a while, that Governor Newsom has talked about all year before the COVID crisis, which is to bring everybody online so that they can participate and be part of the 21st century by being connected with real fast internet connections. Much more important now than it's ever been. The kind of thing that takes investment, which I know this governor is committed to, and which has got to happen for young people and everybody else to participate in the 21st century economy and education.
So, Tom, stepping away from California, would Bernie Sanders and his ideas be a better fit for the time, for the moment, than Joe Biden?
Look, I think that people have to understand that Joe Biden is much more progressive than he's generally given credit for. And if you go policy by policy, I think you'll see that he is going to be a very strong representative of the values and the goals of the Democratic Party. And so I have a ton of respect for Bernie Sanders, and I think that he was ahead of his time in many ways, talking about a more just America. But I think you sell Joe Biden short if you think that he hasn't heard that, if you think that he is not committed to those same ideals and for pushing for them real time when he becomes president.